Antonio part of each week for most of the past year has given me added appreciation for the unique community that you have, why you're in San Antonio, why San Antonio is such a success, and also a recognition that many of the people that are in this room or who form part of this delegation have played a key role in making it a success and addressing the challenges that I know Bexar County and all of our area in Central and South Texas face. You've picked a challenging time to come to Washington. If the goal is to stop something from happening, this is your year. But as I've read through each of your white papers, and I asked for them in advance to get more familiar with your issues, and about now I believe with 5 different committees, I noticed that y'all want to actually adopt a few things and get a few changes. And this session of Congress reminds me a little bit of a fellow that I served with a long time ago in the Texas Senate as a young senator down there from West Texas. And somebody asked him what he did in Austin. He said, "Oh, I don't do anything in Austin. I'm just there in case somebody else tries to do something." And that is the case with a lot of folks here this year, and they're not all in one party. But it is a challenge, particularly in this election year, particularly with the divisions that exist in the Congress and exist in our country, to get legislation approved. And we've talked in our individual meetings about many of the challenges that you face on particular programs. It's also here in Congress, as you've seen today, other than a caucus meeting early, we had the actuaries for the Social Security system and the Medicare system, CMS for Medicare and Medicaid, testifying in the Budget Committee this morning. And this afternoon we had Secretary Sebelius talking about health care and a variety of issues in the Ways and Means Committee, and in between many delegations of people coming during that, and meanwhile some higher education matters on the floor. I feel a little bit, sometimes maybe I date myself, from one of those old I Love Lucy segments where Lucy and Ethel are in the chocolate factory and the things are coming around so fast they can't keep it going, and they're dropping some and eating some and some are going by. Really, you can only reach in at any given time and take a few issues and make them priorities. And I think what your presence here does is to help shape those priorities, because if you're trying to represent people, you need to focus on the priorities that are most important to them. So your presence, even though we may not see a lot of immediate results, and when we're together here next year and you're up again, I have a feeling that many of the same legislative issues that you have this time will be on the agenda next time, hopefully better able to address some of those issues. But that's the challenge and that's the situation that we face. In looking at what some of those issues are and the discussions that we've had in these group sessions, one that seemed to transcend whether it was your manufacturing committee or cybersecurity or education or some of the individual groups that I did not meet with is workforce development. That is an issue that I think is critical. We talk sometimes about the build it and they will come philosophy as being flawed. But when it comes to workforce, I think when you build and develop a workforce, people do come and they are interested in a community that has people educated and available at all skill sets. Those who choose to go into some of the good jobs at Toyota that I heard about yesterday, that I will see again when I tour Toyota on Friday. Great jobs for people who have a high school degree and an aptitude to work hard and been through some of the internships that you told me about that are there at Toyota and at a number of other companies. Those that go on to the Alamo colleges, having visited at 3, 4 of the campuses, I believe, of the Alamo colleges, and seeing the diverse programs that are offered there. And of course, those that go on with my friend Dr. Ricardo Romo at UTSA or Trinity or at St. Mary's or Incarnate Word, that make such a contribution in the community. And I'm glad to see that focus on education at all levels. In our family, the emphasis to a significant degree, as I discussed with your education subcommittee, has been on our youngest Texans. My wife, who was previously a first-grade bilingual teacher, went back and got her doctorate and now works with the Pew Charitable Trust on early childhood education. And our daughter, Kathy, after teaching school for a few years, is now the pre-K coordinator for the Education Service Center just to your north that comes down as close as New Braunfels. We are therefore particularly pleased that Mayor Castro is placing an emphasis on early childhood in the education initiative that he's launched that many of you are a part of. I think that is the place to start. In my work on the Ways and Means Committee, I've worked at the other end of the educational scale, trying to use the tax system, much as your manufacturing committee suggested, and I think with some good ideas, that we try to develop a tax credit or perhaps expand an existing tax credit to cover training and workforce development. I worked on it for those who might want to go to St. Philip's or who might want to go to UTSA, or as a pretty strong Longhorn, I always say even Texas A&M, and I've amended that now that I've seen the presence of Texas A&M in Southside, visiting last Friday at the South San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, for example. But this is a tax credit that almost everyone qualifies to get $2,500 of tuition, textbooks, instructional materials directly off of their tax bill. And I think that is a real help, particularly to families going to the Alamo colleges, but it can be helpful in the others as well. I originally got that added as part of the Economic Recovery Act in 2009. It's been extended each year. The President has called for it to be permanently extended. I think it is a good complement to the Pell Grants that y'all talked about, that we want to keep at that 5,500 level and not see it shrink, as well as to the other ideas that you have about workforce development. Another key part, of course, of workforce development, particularly in San Antonio, and I did not meet with your immigration committee, but I know it permeates many other things, and I was pleased to see it as part of your program, is how we deal with immigration. It's unfortunate that that was not a priority, and there are many reasons, like the economic downturn, why it was not in the first year of this administration. But it is a lingering issue that has the nation so divided. I find it difficult to believe that there are many people of goodwill who could meet with DREAM Act students, as I've done at San Antonio College, and listen to their stories and what they have to contribute, reflecting on the young man who was detained briefly and then released at the San Antonio airport on his way to Harvard to go back to school, and not think that quick approval of the DREAM Act is in our interest in San Antonio to add to the development of our workforce and to address something that is really unfair to those students. But it's more than the DREAM Act. It is a need to find a reasonable path to citizenship for the millions of people that are here, for those that are law-abiding and are contributing in San Antonio and Austin and many other communities. Speaking of Austin, since I make that trip up and down I-35 on such a regular basis, I was pleased to meet with your Transportation Committee and see the needs that I see every week in terms of infrastructure. I was asked about what I thought about the House and Senate transportation bills. I think the House bill is disastrous and the Senate bill is significantly flawed. Those are the choices we have. I think we are likely to only have a short-term extension again on transportation because as with so many other things, there's a willingness to have us address transportation, an awareness of the great needs of transportation in our state and across our country. The only thing is that there's not a willingness by all to pay for that. And I don't know any way we can bring streetcars across San Antonio east and west, north and south, how we can meet the challenges that are particularly significant out on the northern end of the community, having been caught in more than one traffic jam and all up and down the corridor, or build a Lone Star Rail to link communities throughout Central and South Texas without putting more tax dollars in. And that gets me to the broader question and some of the specifics that y'all raised, and then I throw it open to your questions. And that is how we work to get the government we want and no more, but to get the government we want where we're not totally reliant on the Chinese and the Saudis to cover all of our debt, because we can't do that indefinitely. We clearly have to make some changes in our spending programs. It was a tough decision, but I voted for protecting the full faith and credit of the United States last year and making the spending cuts, including what has led to sequestration that I know is a concern, and a very real concern that I share about how that impacts all of our military installations in the San Antonio area, as well as broader defense concerns. But we cannot meet the needs, I believe, of national security and homeland security and other vital services, even if we make significant cuts, unless we have some additional revenues. It's just like the transportation program. It's just like all the other requests that y'all have had, whether it's a new gate at Fort Sam or expansion of health care or water projects that are very important in San Antonio as well. On all of those, there have got to be some revenues. And the problem we face this year, I think, is summarized in one of the early of the many presidential debates that the Republican candidates have had, where they were asked, you'll remember, how about this? How about we agree that we're going to cut $10 of spending and we will add $1 of tax revenue? And each of those candidates, one by one, rejected that deal. That a 10-to-1 deal was something they couldn't agree upon. And until we can get some broader agreement on getting a little revenue along with reasonable spending cuts, we will neither get our budget in balance, address our long-term debt problems, or be able to fund the type of reasonable initiatives that y'all have presented in your program. That's my quick overview. I really wanted to use the time to the extent you have it, and I see my colleague Congressman Cuellar is here to talk with you also, but to address any questions you might have on any of the issues that you've raised here or that you might have as an individual or a business representative. Are there any?
What's happening on the maps with respect to your representation?
The maps just came down about 45 minutes ago, and I believe that the time I've invested in San Antonio has been well spent. That question came from a person who is not a disinterested inquirer. Commissioner Atkinson has been my landlord out there on South Cross, and I want to pay this month's rent, and I'll get next month's in too. Because I will be there and active on the south side and across the community in what's called CD 35. Yes, Jim.
Any interest or your position on ways and means committee? What's the timeline for any type of revamping of the tax code, recognizing you're not going to get something done in the presidential year, but tell us the cycle of something like that. How long something like that?
Well, it seems to have taken a really long time, and I think that both on individual taxes, on corporate taxes, we do need far-reaching concern. I've been very interested in the corporate side of this because I find that, though I think their most recent report for General Electric, they filed yesterday, the story I saw, they were up to paying an effective rate of about 2%. I think that a system in which we have 30 corporations that spent more on lobbying last year than they contributed in taxes is not an even playing field. It is not anti-business to talk about that, because if a store on the south side, let's give an example, is selling General Electric light bulbs and they're incorporated, why should they be paying near 35 cents on the dollar if General Electric is paying 0 or 2 cents on the dollar? All of these corporate reform plans, as you know, as an important corporate citizen in San Antonio, affect different industries in different ways. would like us to work toward a system in which we bring down the statutory rate of 35% to a lower level, but I don't favor doing that through borrowing from the Chinese, shifting more of the tax burden to individuals, and I think that's what some of these proposals are kind of pie in the sky and talking about. We have had testimony from a variety of different sources that if you close every single, you can call them corporate loopholes, but really they include provisions that are of long standing, like you're getting a deduction at Valero if you donate to any of the many good causes that I'm sure you're asked to donate to on a regular basis, charitable deductions for corporations. If you close that, if you cut off the research and development credit, which may actually be a place for us to include this training issue that you talked to me about from the manufacturing group. If you close all those things, you still can barely get down to 28%. And so people that talk about lowering the rate to 25 or 20 or 15, they're talking about borrowing money, or they're talking about shifting more of the burden to individuals. As far as individuals are concerned, I think, you know, all of us would like to pay as little tax as we can. But the system we have now is not generating the revenues that we need. And what we will face at the end of, after the elections and at the beginning of next year, is the sequestration that are across-the-board cuts that are of particular concern in the defense area, but they're a concern in the non-defense too. They and the Bush tax cuts all expire or occur at about the same time. So by this time next year, we should have acted on what we will do about any of the provisions of the Bush tax cuts, and whether corporate tax reform can occur at the same time remains to be seen. I don't think it can if it adds much revenue. I guess this is kind of a long answer to, I think when you come next year, we'll still be working on this. But I do think next year after the election, we've had so many hearings on it in Ways and Means, that we might move to a resolution of some additional major corporate tax reform. Are there other questions or observations? Well, Blakely, thank you so much, and thanks. I had 5 really well-informed groups. Libby and I will look forward to being here as part of your reception in a little while, and look forward to getting to visit with more of you individually. This is a very timely present.